assignments tear down every moral fiber and training that the person has. And just literally, they become a human chalice. They fill up with demons. As they do these things, they break down all the barriers holding the devil back. And when they're done, they have a very programmed, very brainwashed, and very powerful supernatural witch or wizard. So he prayed and he fasted. I heard Jack Howes the other day. I guess I never realized until I heard him how little Christians pray and fast. He's been around a long time and says he's only met a handful of praying and fasting Christians, and I can believe it anymore. But this minister prayed and he fasted. He said, God, let me cross Lance Collins' path. And that was my occult name. He prayed and he prayed, and finally he felt this is the time, and he got up one morning, Saturday morning, a few days before Labor Day in 1972, and he went downtown and he started going through the occult stores. Now, was never in the occult stores there much. And the one building that I lived in, there were 2 occult stores in that building, downtown San Antonio. One day, one of the managers that Saturday morning had an overdose of drugs, was critical and couldn't make it in, and I had to go unlock the place for the sales girl to come in. And I just unlocked, got all the cash fixed up. Been there more than about 5 minutes, and his pastor came in. I knew he was a Baptist the moment he walked through the door. He carried a big black Bible. You have to be in southern Texas to understand. They don't go any place without a big black Thompson or something like that. He carries Schofields up here, they carry Thompsons down there. As one pastor says, I like a rapid-fire Bible. But he came in, and I remember telling Linda, the girl that was with me, oh boy, here comes trouble. He walked up and he said, I'm looking for Lance Collins, and kind of braced myself, and I said, I'm Lance Collins, can I help you? And he said, well, I want to tell you about the love of Jesus. I said, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. You take your Christian garbage and you go somewhere else. I remember the words very distinct. So he started preaching anyway. They figured he was there. He just dug his heels in and opened up. Well, I gave him about 2 sentences, and the spirits in me took over, and they started cussing. He just kept on preaching. So I started reciting chants, demonic chants, out to block what he was doing. Usually it got Christians scared, they ran off. He didn't budge. He stopped and he said, well, I see, Ephesians 6:12. I'm not warring against Lance Collins, I'm warring against the demons inside him. So, since they want to talk to me, I order them to be silent in the name of Jesus. And he just started in a very powerful prayer, pleading the blood of Jesus Christ, and finally ending with this. He says, I order, in the name of Jesus, the devil to stop giving you any power of witchcraft, and to stop giving you any of his benefits, and took one look at me and saw that I was on drugs and said, and stop giving you drugs. Now, parents, listen to me. If your kids are on drugs and you've got a problem, stop preaching to them. Just order the demon inside them and the devil to stop supplying them the drugs. You'd be surprised, we've done it, how fast the pushers and dealers they're getting their drugs from get busted all of a sudden. Try it. It works. And when he was done, he said, now I'm going to pray and fast for you, Lance, until you get saved. And I don't know why I said it. I just said, you're crazy. Get out of here. Don't do that. Don't do that. I remember I told dozens of witches, I'm going to pray and fast so you get saved. Don't do that. One thing a demon does not like is prayer and fasting. He turned around. He walked off. One thing that had intrigued me, I kept trying to convince myself that I had shut up to listen to him because he was so weird. But authority over the demons, and I had shut up, and I had heard the whole thing. I went on upstairs, very shaken and not knowing why, very sick and not knowing why. I'd never felt like this in my life. I'd never come up against a Christian like this. Usually I said, I'm a witch, and they couldn't wait to find the nearest bomb shelter or crawl under the bed, or get the straitjacket out. Well, something about my eyes back then, they never questioned when I said I was a witch. They just took off running. So I went upstairs, took out my drugs, my needle, did a fix, no problem. I had sent all the rest of my drugs out that night, big shipments that we had stored around the area, to other states because we had a huge shipment coming in that night. I said, boy, this will teach that dumb preacher. I ought to go over and drop off a kilo of it on his door just to teach him that the devil doesn't exist and I don't get my drugs from the devil and he can't stop me from getting drugs. Besides, there's nothing wrong with drugs. I'm just literally dying, eating away from them. There's nothing wrong with drugs. This is how the young people are today. Their friends are overdosing. I talk to talked with people, 14 and 15. I said, how many friends do you lose every year? Oh, 10, 20. They overdose on angel dust or something, killer weed, different things. But there's nothing wrong with drugs. I had asked one girl why she was so bummed out. She says, well, this is the 5th girlfriend that's ended up in the mental hospital not knowing who she is from taking acid and having a bad trip. I said, do you take it? She says, sure, but I don't have any bad trips. There's nothing wrong with acid. When I got saved, I didn't have a friend that either wasn't in jail or wasn't dead. It'll do you something to you to walk into your friend's apartment and see them laying on the floor, needles still in their veins, and dead from an overdose or from strychnine being added to the drug because they wanted them out of the way. I went on upstairs, as I said, I did the drug. Not to worry, more drugs coming in. Except midnight, my phone rang, and I was still speeding. I hardly ever slept, hardly ever ate. Answered the phone, and I said, yeah, what's going on? Private number, I knew it had to be somebody to do it. And they told me a story that I didn't like too well. We had paid off the Border Patrol. Everything was taken care of, standard run of drugs. Except that night, the ATF had heard that some illegal aliens were coming across the border. They called all the Border Patrol over, from the regular stations, and had put on reserve units. And a guy that was so spaced out, he had sampled a little of pure speed. There was 3 huge targets about this big, close to $1 million worth of speed, in the back of the car, just sitting on the back seat with the lid off where everybody could see it. He wasn't worried. Drove up to the thing, and the guy wheels out a gun and says, you're under arrest. It's all over in a matter of moments. I'm sure he never even realized what happened. It was all because a preacher took authority over the devil. When I got that call, come flooding back. This guy's weird. Here he is stopping my drugs. And I said, no, that's just an accident. But it never had happened before. So I realized after, calming down about the situation that I was going to be going through withdrawal pretty soon. So I made some local calls. Nobody had anything. Most people around there were on heroin and not speed. So I made some out-of-state calls and finally found in the state of Ohio some of the drugs that we had sent on had arrived, and they would get them down there, but it'd be like Tuesday morning because of legal police actions they were having up there. But that's too long for somebody on drugs as bad as I was. Sure enough, by Monday night, I almost didn't know who I was anymore. Bound and determined that I was going to get drugs no matter what had to be. I got a handgun with my car, started the drive out. I was going to go to every area around that I knew. If I had to kill the person, I was going to get drugs. And wrecked the car trying to get out of the parking lot. Just got out of the car, left the gun and everything just sitting there. Started walking down the street kind of in a daze, trying to get myself together, and came upon a movie theater. Big bright lights attracted me. Just paid my money. Wasn't paying attention to the movie. Nothing. Went on in. Got about 3 rows back, right from the screen. Here was some idiot up there waving a Bible all over the place, and flash bulbs going off, and it was a movie called The Crossing the Switchblade. As I got mad about this, what am I into now and stuff, I started getting intrigued with a character named Nicky Cruz. And I guess I probably got everybody in that theater mad at me because I kept yelling at Dave Wilkerson, stay away from him, preacher, dumb Christian, leave him alone, he's just fine the way he is. All the way through the movie, cussing this guy out and telling him to leave Nicky Cruz alone. Finally, something very weird happened. Now, we knew that Christians talked about being born again, but then born again was a phrase used by the Masons and a phrase used by the witches. Didn't mean anything. But we've been taught by the doctrine of astrology, which, by the way, it takes 3 things to practice witchcraft: astrology, herbs, and jewelry, or talismans. So witchcraft, and astrology, I learned from a very early child. One thing I've been taught was I was born a set personality. The stars had decided what my personality was going to be like. And there was no way, no rite in witchcraft, no nothing that would ever change my personality. If I was bad, I was bad. Besides, I didn't consider myself too bad. I mean, I could have always been a Christian. That would have been terrible. So I sat there and I watched him, and he changed. He wasn't just as saying, I'm born again. He changed. Now listen to me tonight. If you walk the aisle and you've given your heart to God, and there wasn't a complete turnaround, a complete change, and you went back to the way that you were 5 minutes before you walked that aisle, something is wrong. I'm not a Billy Graham that will have you say 3 words and say you're saved. It's in the fruit, and if there's not been a change in your life, something's wrong. And I got up and I walked out of that theater in utter confusion. Here was another thing that was in the Word of God. were walking out of the theater at one time. He walked up and he passed one track out. He gave it to me. He turned around, didn't say much. He just said, "This is for you," turned around and walked off. The track was called Bewitched. So I sat there and I read. I said, this guy's pretty smart. He says that Bewitched was put on by the witches. Well, I knew that. My foster mother was one of the producers. I practically grew up on the sets. I sat there and I watched the rest of the track, Ouija board being run by demons. Well, we knew that. That's why witches didn't use Ouija boards. We let the Christians use it. So I read on, but the one thing I could not get over was this hell thing with the flames and the devil, because witches don't believe in the devil. Satanists do, not witches. So I said, this guy's so right, but he's probably just a dumb Christian. Threw it in the water, walked on. Started going to go back to my apartment, got in the casino building, heard the music coming from one of our nightclubs there called the Club Aquarius, decided to go on over. Nobody there that I knew except the staff, so I went on back and locked the door to the manager's office and I sat down. I said, I got to think this thing out. I'd like to talk to a Christian. I was talking to a man on the phone today, Jack Chick, and he was going over all the people that he had found in his investigations that were on the Illuminati payroll that were ministers, supposed to be fundamental ministers. And I said, yeah, I know, Jack. As I sat in that manager's office that night, he knew my testimony. I said, my biggest problem was I spent 2 hours trying to think of a pastor in the town that we did not have on our payoff. Well, they were pastors, that's why I didn't know them, because they weren't on our payoff. And finally, I remembered that just the night before, one of our witches, which was a prostitute in the area, in downtown San Antonio, had come in screaming in the Club Aquarius, and I wasn't in the mood to hear any screaming, particularly from her at the moment, going through withdrawal. But she was complaining that she was going bankrupt. And what the problem was her area was over by the Greyhound bus station, and she'd be over there prostituting, and some idiots from a Christian coffee house would come over and preach to the guys, and she would proposition them. That could really put you out of business. I mean, no serviceman's going to walk off with a prostitute with somebody telling them about hell at the same moment. So she decided we had to do something about the place, and I told her to get lost, but I remembered it. And I said, well, that's only 8 blocks away. It's only 2 in the morning. Nobody'd be in bed at 2 in the morning. Which is the night people, you know. Took off walking on over there. The place had a reputation of its own. Just 3 months earlier, it had been a burlesque place, a show bar with strippers in it. Baptist preacher said, enough is enough. We don't need this down here. He goes in, jumps up on the bar stool, up on the bar, shoves 2 strippers in the middle of their act off the bar, and starts preaching. 15 minutes later, the 2 strippers had pulled the curtains down off the wall, wrapped them around them, kneeling down at the bar, giving their heart to the Lord. They're still Christians to this day, by the way. I know them. The man or woman that owns the place is praying, giving their heart to the Lord. 3 members of the 4-piece band are, 2 of the 3 bartenders, and about 15 of the customers. That's a quick revival. I like to have that quick. So I went on over there. Now they had turned the deed to this place when they got saved. This is what I mean about a change in your life. They could have rented the building out. They took the deed and they gave it to one of the Baptist churches in the area and said, do what you want with it. Just turned it into a Christian coffee house. What better way? So I went over, opened the door, and it was supposed to close at midnight according to time, but the door was unlocked. So I went on in, and one guy was there, bent over the Coke fountain. You know, they changed the booze over for Coke. That's what some Christians haven't done. And he was sitting there working on the Coke fountain, and I went in, and we started talking. And he started witnessing to me. Now, I have nothing against the 4 spiritual laws or any set plan like the Roman trail or anything like this. They're fine. They've won thousands of souls. But that particular plan didn't mean anything to me. I wasn't even interested in it because for mainly I didn't believe totally in the Word of God. And I wanted something that would deal with my immediate problems. And I wasn't hearing anything. Finally, he realized that he needed some help, so he called up his pastor. Now, as everybody knows, nobody calls their pastor at 3 in the morning, do they? No, just all the time. So he called him up. The pastor says, well, we've been praying and fasting for this guy along with some other churches. We'll get right on it. I mean, he probably called up a bunch of people. And he come back and he said, now, Lord, this is out of my hands. The man's name was Claude Elmer. He said, this is out of my hands. I don't know the first thing about witchcraft. I don't know the first thing about the devil's kingdom. But you do. And he quoted Luke chapter 10, where the Lord had saw the devil fall from heaven and we had power over the devil. And he said, now you were there when it happened. You educate me right now. What scriptures do I give this man? And he said, I'd like to read you something. He opened his Bible to 2 Timothy 1:9. It is the best scripture in the world to witness to anybody in the occult. Because when you're in the occult, there's one thing that you do not have. You do not have a mind without fear 24 hours a day. You live in a nightmare world, and you try to convince yourself by brainwashing yourself that you're not unhappy. And he sat there and he said, God can remake your mind and take away the fear. And when he said, take away the fear, I said, let's get with this thing right now. And he started praying with me, and he led me in a prayer of salvation. And I remember when I closed, I said, Lord, I want your forgiveness. I want to miss hell. I believe in it now. But I want you to take this fear out of my life. And I was sitting there shaking, scared to death. Somebody's going to walk through the door anytime and see me in this place and report me. I said, Lord, take the fear away. And when I got up out of there, I didn't have any fear. In fact, I walked back, went right on in my apartment, sat down, took a Bible with me. And when I went down the next day, I was reading the Bible, walking into the occult store. The fear was so far gone, I was going myself killed. When God does it, he does it right. Now, we've been trying to minister to people in the occult for a long time. We've really been spinning our wheels for 5.5 years. We've gotten about 500 people saved. About 50 of them have been killed. When I was here last, we've been in prayer for 2 weeks about a new idea that we felt would work. And that was a retreat for the occult to go to. This Monday, on their New Year's Day, couldn't have been arranged better. We didn't do it on purpose, but it was perfect. While their grand jurors were meeting, our rehab center opened. First candidate is already in it. Right now, coming from Maryland, is a girl that's the second most powerful person that had ever left the Illuminati. Philip Rothschild's own girlfriend, teenage girlfriend, left of the occult from the 11th richest family. Found out about the house going to be open before our plans to release the news through Chick publication tracks and the phone numbers to go with it ever came out. They're not even off the press yet. And the occult world already knows, and it's calling hotline numbers that aren't even published yet. They somehow found the numbers. Another girl was saved 2 days ago. I don't even know who she is. I'm holding my breath because she knows me. Jack Chick got a call today. Said a girl walked into a Christian bookstore and says, I hear John Todd's still alive. The guy said, yes. He's been alive for 5.5 years. And he said, yes, well, if he can be alive for 5.5 years, I can be alive for 5.5 years. I want to become a Christian and get out. Now that is sweeping. That type of news is sweeping. You may not understand what that means. But if you were in East Berlin trying to get to West Berlin and there was a wall of death between you, you'd know what it means. If they tore that Berlin Wall down, you can imagine the East Berliners, how many would be flooding to West Berlin. Well, that wall of fear and death that the Illuminati has so strongly built up has just been shattered. We have done in the last month things on purpose that they have promised the occult world would never happen. Isaac Bonowitz, the Rothschild's own enforcer and one of those 13 top witches, lives in Frisco. He promised that the #1 witchcraft city in the United States, I would never preach in San Francisco. We preached there 2 Sundays ago. He's got a lot of explaining to do. And the word is getting around. We need your prayers. There's a revival breaking open in the occult world now. They've gotten the word. There's a way out. I'm just going to have to start praying for 3 or 4 more buildings. Because if this carload gets here, we're not going to have much more room. We got a 4-bedroom house. It can fill up pretty quick with a bunch of witches in it. So, by the way, we need your prayers just for that. You've never been in a situation where you have about 15 witches all around you at one time, all with different problems. My poor wife, she couldn't come with me tonight because she's setting up trying to get this one girl through it right now. So we do need your prayers. I want to thank the people who did take envelopes and send them. I think something like 500 envelopes were taken that night, and we received them. But those 10 helped get that house open. And I want to thank the people who sent them. But I'm asking your prayers. We need your prayers. Now, if the pastor comes up, I want to say a couple words. You may not be in witchcraft. You may not think that this message has anything to do with you. But you're missing the whole point. I was in a world where it was impossible to become a Christian, and Jesus made me one. I was like one of the girls that I used to live with when I was in the occult world. Recently, she was at a very important witchcraft meeting that we happened to find out about, and I pulled into the parking lot for a few minutes to see who was there. And she walked by the car and had a couple Christian brothers with me. She looked in the car and just smiled, kept on walking. never recognized me. That's the difference between the way I am now and the way I was then. When the Lord changes you, he totally changes you. Now, we give our testimony for several reasons, to show that no matter what, whether you were raised a Christian and you know all your life, or you were raised in the worst frame of life, it's still the same miracle. God still saves you just the same. Sometimes I think it's harder to get the PKs and the Christian kids saved than it is the witches. But at the same time, we try to flag you down from going the same direction we went with drugs. You'll never know the feeling to lose so many friends that should be with you today and so many loved ones because of drugs that we kept convincing ourselves was all right. This isn't some preacher getting up here and telling you that's never been in it. I wished I had a half hour to talk about the worst thing that the occult world ever planned out and carried out. That's called rock music. But I'm going to say two quick things. Parents, the rock music does not belong to you, your kids. If your kids are in your home, it belongs to you and you're answerable for it. And if you want to believe they're garbage, that it's all right, and you want to forget things like Kiss saying that their real name is Kings and Satanic Service, and that rock music is actually satanic spells being cast and being planned by the Satanist Church, and that's a direct quote, then you go right on ahead. Right now, one of the Manson family girls is in trial, and she said the number one thing that the occult world used to brainwash them was Beatle music and rock music. If you want to leave it in your home, I won't go into details why you can't, but if you want to leave it in your home and all the demons that it attracts, fine. If you want your kids to buffalo you, then it's all right. But I recommend you go home today, get a cardboard box, and break the records, and burn those covers, and get it out of your home. And you'd be surprised at how fast your kids come around after they finish throwing their 2-year-old tantrum. But I wish that I had the time more on rock music, but believe me, it is the work carefully planned out in the occult world. We spent $8 million to produce Jesus rock music and paid the man who started it, named Chuck Smith, just because Christians were destroying rock music and we were afraid that it would be banned from the Christian church. So we carefully put it in the form of Christian rock music. So if they would spend $8 million to keep rock music in your hands, then the hardcore rock must be even worse. And it is. I'm going to... Okay, Pastor. I don't mind. I drove all day so I could say these things. I was the manager of Zodiac Productions, which Zodiac Productions name's been changed since then. I'm not even sure what to call it now, but it's the largest music conglomerate in the world. It owns RCA Records, Columbia Records, Motown Records, owns almost all the concert booking agencies in the United States. And that's not even the name of the company that owns it. The name of the company that owns it is Brenner Enterprises, and Brenner Enterprises is owned by Chase Manhattan. Chase Manhattan's owned by Standard Oil, and Standard Oil is owned by the Lords of London. You can track it all back. You kind of get the idea after a while. But I was the managing president of Zodiac Productions. It's one of my jobs, is being one of these 13 people. Thus, I got to know many of the people who produce music and sing the music and play the music that you play. Recently, one of the top people in rock music from the group, can't think of the name of the group now, it's one of the top rock groups still in existence that's been around a long time, was just saved. And he told how when they play in their concerts, they would control through witchcraft spells in their mind the people to do different things in the audience. And that they'd work the audience up not with the music, but with their mind and their music combination. Now, one of the closest friends that I got during that time that I attained was a man named David Crosby. Crosby, Still, Nash and Young. And I saw David the day before Christmas last year, talked with him. I got him away from this witch that he had with him. He told her to go shopping. We were in West Hollywood, and I was witnessing around some people I knew. We went off in this store, and we started talking. I said, David, I'd like to ask you a couple questions. I said, I already know the answers, but I've been gone for 5 years. I'd like to know if certain things are still the way they were when I left. I said, now I'll have to explain some of this when I'm done, because you're not going to understand it all unless you know something about music. I said, do they still take the master to the temple room? Dave said, yeah. I said, do they still have the colon conjure demons into the master? He said, of course. I said, now, I got to know something. What's the main reason for rock music? He said, come on, Lance, you know what the reason is. Please, David, I don't want to guess. Tell me what the main reason is. He said, the same as when you were in, so that we can play spells on people that we couldn't cast spells upon. I'll explain what that means in a minute. I said, okay, one last thing. I've been hearing that you must be an initiated witch now to get a record contract. He said, that's right. He He said, many of us that weren't total witches have to be witches now in order to produce music. Thank you. The master is a tape about as big as the top of this podium that looks like an overgrown 8-track that the album is cut on and is placed in a machine that produces and presses the records and the 8-tracks and cassettes that you buy. After it's been recorded, it's taken in. This is why a master's cut months in advance before it's released. On the full moon, it's taken in to a temple room about the size of this auditorium that is in every one of the major music companies behind locked doors up in the executive office. And it's placed on an altar sitting in the north of the room and a pentagram engraved in the floor. And 13 hand-chosen witches and wizards and a coven come in and conjure a principality or a power up, usually Regia or something like that, and order him to tell the demons under him to follow every record and every tape coming off of that master. As I tell many Christian parents, you can go home and count your kids' records, probably yours too, and count how many demons at least are there. If that's too hard for you to believe, I'm sorry. That's why they do it. Now listen to me. This is why rock music's addicting. Have you ever seen kids that got rid of their music? They go around like this. They can't wait to find a rock station somewhere and they sneak off just like getting a cigarette or a fix because it's addicting. That's why they can't give it up. The rest of the conversation was this. You can't cast a spell on a Christian, but you can get a Christian to cast a spell on themselves. If you give the permission for the spell to work, being a Christian won't block it. And rock music is not just a song. It is supernatural music that which is carefully designed by their spirit guides or familiar spirits in the form of spells. Now, although the devil's music's power is the music and God's music is the words, much of the songs are written in what we call witch language. Give you kind of an idea. Many of you talk on a CD, unless you know what a smoky is, and a 10-4, and a front door and back door and rocking chair and these type of things. You don't know what you're talking about. Same with witches. When you're in the first and second level, you have to learn over 2,000 words that said by anybody else means something totally different than when you say them. Elton John has said he's never written a song or sung a song that wasn't in which language. And I want to show you something. See how many kids in here are beyond and adults. How many remember and have heard at least several times a song called Hotel California? Somebody tell me what it meant. Quickly, somebody tell me what it meant. Huh? That's pretty close. But from the words, what did it mean? Well, that's more of a guess. See, most people can't tell you. That's why when people do drugs and they listen to songs in which language, they get some of the meaning. But most of the time, they can't tell you. Stop and think how many songs are out there that you really like, and you don't have any idea what the person was talking about. Beyond the Yellow Brick Road? How about The Destroyer by Kiss? Can anybody tell me what it's about? Kiss said in it, kids, tell your parents. They're talking about Helter Skelter. Beatles sung Helter Skelter in which language? Nobody knew what it meant. Manson's dead because he belongs to the process. Helter Skelter is a several thousand-year-old word. And they're believing that it's going to happen in a year from now, from this very date. Most of the music is either about Helter Skelter or a place called the Night Winds, which is what Hotel California is about, and different doctrines of witchcraft. You listen to them, your parents let you listen to them, and they have no idea. Kiss openly bragged how they were gaining control of people through their music because the people played their music. They told how they didn't form their own group. Their church, because they were ordained ministers of the Satanist church, placed them together. And that's how most of the music is done. David Crosby, when him and Crosby, Still Nash and Young produced the record 2-8 Street, they ordered the principality of Medici to order demons of rebellion to go into the record, and everybody that heard it would be rebellious against law and order and government. And it was one of the reasons for the great upheaval in the 60s was that one album, and they take open credit for it. I can go on all night, but that's mainly it. Parents, get this stuff in and destroy it now. I guarantee your kids will straighten up. They may pout for a while, but they'll straighten up. Okay? Sorry it's so late.
All right. We've had live action here. We're a bunch of night owls now. This ain't nothing. How many of you believe he knows what he's talking about when he talks about rock music? Huh?
Not enough of the kids, I'd probably say.
Yeah. Well, I sincerely believe he knows exactly what he's talking about there. And I hope you'll listen to him. I hope you'll hear where he's coming from. And if you continue listening to that junk, where you're going, we just cannot innocent people in our homes. You can't stop them from being played and sold and all that, but we can't tolerate. You mentioned a time or two the Illuminati. Could you, in just a few words, summarize what you understand the Illuminati is?
Okay. Many people call it the Great Conspiracy, which is kind of true, but actually the Illuminati is about 1,000 conspiracies all running at one time. Therefore, a lot of them backfired. But it was formed about 100 years before its original birth date. The birth date is May 1st, 1776, witches always start everything on May 1st. That's why even the communist birthday is on May 1st. That's their New Year's Day. But it means the holders of the light, or the light bearers. Now, witches have another name for it, too. Since it is a death penalty to use the name the Illuminati, you must say Mariah, which means the conquering, destroying wind. But its belief is that Lucifer is God, and that everything else is imposter, and that Lucifer can bring peace to the world by his lifters, or upholders, conspiracy. And they're going to conspire till they have a world government. Sometimes I wonder why they could be so dumb that sitting there doing exactly what is going to lead to their destruction. But then that's usually how the devil is. He keeps everything in darkness. But that's the Illuminati. It's a world conspiracy, and I might add, an extremely powerful one. The occult is its religion. Now, many of you are doctors, lawyers, mechanics, construction workers, businessmen, whatever. Most of you are Christians and pastors, okay? But he's your minister, or at least if you're from this church. And the Illuminati, they all have jobs. But the witches are their ministers. But they're all Luciferian. The witches are the ministers, and they're the church members, and the religion is Luciferianism. Now, the real Illuminati, the organization itself, is financially powerful and politically motivated. Through their finance, they have an old witches' room, which is kind of a saying, a poem. They say, let the kings be kings, let the bankers be bankers, and let the priests be priests. Translated, it simply means that it doesn't matter who rules, as long as the bankers have the money, they'll own the person who rules. And the priests will run the bankers. That's the Illuminati.
You mentioned, John, some publication you said might be out in about 3 months. What is that again?
It's called Riot and Revolution. It's by Tom Berry, classmate of my pastor, Roland Rasmussen, graduate from Bob Jones, the Doctrine and Divinity. And it takes the plan of the Illuminati for helter-skelter and gaining control of the world. It takes some of my testimony to justify it, and then it gives an answer to Christians what to do during helter-skelter.
Where did the material come from, and how did he get it?
Some of it came from me, and some of it came from another minister named Joe Boyd. Some of it came from Jack Hound. He'd gathered. Also, he had about 20 pages of notes when I met him, which he said he gained by going through about 2,000 books. They were on the Illuminati and the Bilderbergers. Okay?
Yeah.
Satan worshipers believe in Satan, which is the lower 3 levels believe in God or else God's self, in ESP and so on. They believe in plural gods like the mother goddess Isis and so on. Or the higher levels are Luciferians, which believe in one God and the minor gods being in the Rothschild. Okay? That's the difference.
You mean the average witch is not taught that there is such a being as Lucifer or the devil?
Well, for one, when you believe in Lucifer, you don't believe it's the devil. Okay? No, they believe in the mother goddess, which is called by many names, as the poem about her goes. Diana, Isis, Asherah, which was the female side of Baal. And they believe, actually it's Baal worship, there was a male and female god. Asherah, and then the horned hunter of the night is the way he's portrayed in all countries, which is more or less kind of the underworld god, the devil, or whatever.
Okay. All right. Anybody with a question or two before we're going to take a love offering here?
There's no difference.
What was his question?
The difference between rock music and soul music. There's no difference. Okay?
All right, some other questions.
In the back. They didn't come up with it. That was about a hurricane that somebody named Mariah. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. In the Satanist church, Christ and Jesus are the same person. Okay? No, that's the teaching. In the Satanist church, Christ, Jesus Christ, and Satan are the same person. That's the Satanist belief. And the Luciferian, they believe that Jesus Christ is the God of evil. Okay? Like we would feel about the devil, they feel about Jesus. And Lucifer, they feel towards him like we feel about Jesus. That's what they teach. Okay?
Oh, they?
I don't know what he said
worker led me to the Lord. The person that helped rehabilitate me was Jack Taylor, but he wasn't around much because he was the pastor. He had to run around the country speaking. It was actually his music director and the youth director. Ann Rowitz was the youth director, and the music director was Malcolm Granger. And I stayed with Malcolm, and him and his wife worked with me, and the youth director worked with me quite a bit. But I don't envy him. I sit back now, and I guess I kind of blocked my mind out how bad I was. But watching all these kids go through rehabilitation, man, that was no easy job. They had to be on their knees a lot, I'll tell you. Black Sabbath. Talking about music group or a Black Sabbath? Well, the music group got its name from it. A Black Sabbath is a witch's Sabbath, okay? It comes 8 times a year. Beltane, if I can get the first part, Beltane is their New Year's Day. That was May 1st, okay? Halloween is Shaham. That was also one of theirs. There's 8 of them, okay? And they come around the year, and it's more or less their big party days. They're super days. Now, if they're in the human sacrifice, they also do human sacrifice at the time. But it's a big time to have an orgy and a big drug party and this type of thing. Everybody wiped out. That's the witch's Sabbath. No? Well, not the Satanist church, but the witchcraft church is. A very, very powerful witch has a song out about witchcraft now called The Force. His name is Tom C. Hall. I just heard very sick song recently. Somebody let me hear. It was by Tammy Wynette, and it was talking about Jesus Christ appearing on midnight special or something like Saturday night something. Anyway, I'm afraid that if he appeared on that rock show, he'd probably bring the Cat of Nine Tails along with him. But some of the music, if it wasn't for witchcraft being behind rock music, I hate country the most. Because I don't see how Christians can listen to it when it's talking about adultery, fornication, getting drunk, cutting people up, running around with everybody else's wife, and things like this. And that's all I ever hear on it. Okay? Well, well, that's what they were referring to. Yeah, they did. No, I'm not going to tell you. Okay? I believe Vic and Russ. Human sacrifice? That's pretty... occasion. Oh, well, the occasion was on a Sabbath, okay? That particular Sabbath happened to be February the 2nd, Candlemas, okay? What was the rest of it? Well, it's done, that particular one was done because of an initiation ceremony that was being done. Mine. But most of the cultists just practice 8 times a year if they're in the blood sacrifice. The lower witches believe that the power for witchcraft comes from orgies and sex. The higher witches believe it's attained by human blood. Okay? Russ, I believe you had your hand. The revolution that they have planned within the United States, most people feel that something like that will never happen in the United States. They're lying to themselves. It will happen, and it's not very far off. Well, by 1980, there'll be... Helter-skelter's only an excuse, okay? The excuse is to be able to declare martial law. That's the whole reason for it. They promised the one side that they will be able to gain control of the United States through revolution, when the whole time is they're just simply setting them up to be able to declare martial law and suspend the Constitution. And by 1980, they plan on being under martial law. Now, I'm not saying, don't all of you start lynching me at one time. I didn't say it was going to happen. I said this is their plan, okay? I'll leave it up to your own prayer life and watching the newspapers whether it's going to happen or not. Vaccine. Just like most other cults. See, Jesus Christ requires just one way. Only one way. The devil will use any way to keep your eyes off that one way. Okay? And he uses the same tactics wherever it branches to. I have no idea if he came out after I got out. I have no idea. They were back in groups like him before, the Christianers and so on. I can't see much difference between them and those two groups. So they probably back him too. Okay, Mike and Bob. Yeah, it's the Council of Foreign Relations. Now, and it's inner brainchild that runs this. It's called the Trilateral Commission. Okay? Okay, I'll leave Bob and then Barbara. Yeah, there's 7 principalities, about 200 powers. Then it starts getting down into lower people we never pay attention to, the lower spirit. Barbara? Yeah, I won't go to all. Just recently, about 3 weeks ago in April, the day before Jack House came to our church to speak, and the day after he left, I came, both times I came walking out of the church at Faith Baptist. One time I got in my car, started to drive off in the parking lot, about 30 people were standing around, and a passing car opened up on us with a gun. And then, that was Sunday night. Then Wednesday night of that week, I was walking out into the parking lot prior to the church letting out with a couple brothers. And when we dug the bullets out of where they hit,
They had fired twice at us, and the bullets were 44 caliber, 44 Magnum. So they don't play around. And the range was so close, it was from the back of that wall to here. You know that the Lord is in it. It really makes you appreciate His divine protection, let me tell you. Ruth, that world takeover plan ended with World War III. But one of the teachings is that when Lucifer sets up his kingdom, okay, that through World War III, most of the civilized world as it exists now will be in rubble. The one protected capital that they have purposely kept all missiles away from both sides, is Jerusalem. And they plan on using Jerusalem to set up from there, okay? Do they believe that Adam's original home, or the Garden of Eden, rests where Jerusalem is? So, it's going to rule from there.
Mike and then Robin, we better let that maybe very quick.
The church that I attend, I'm a member of, is Faith Baptist in Canoga Park, Dr. Rasmussen. The work where it's at, the house, has got to remain the sound. Okay? Very well. All of our church walk around, people trying to find out where it's at, and everybody, shh. It's like the unspeakable secret. Okay? Everybody knows, but nobody says. He was a member of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, which in California is called Universal Church Triumphant Summit International. They always like these names. Okay?
Okay, let's see. Randy?
Not anymore. I try to keep out of communication as much as possible with them. My foster mother has a huge contract on my life, and my brother's trying to collect it, so I try to stay away from them.
By the way, Randy, you cannot communicate with them. You communicate with demons. They imitate them. They cannot speak to you. Let's see. Yes, brother.
Oh, I could. You mean in counting all 8 Sabbaths they last year, from May 1st to May 1st, probably 500, and that's only a guess. I'm probably way under.
Dwayne has one of his books, Chick Publication, I believe it is, and it's made up like a comic book. It tells you, here it is,
Broken Cross. That's the one I wrote.
this is the one that tells you one of their main methods of how they get victims to offer up in blood sacrifice. All right, Robin, I think we better let this be it.
Okay, give me about a minute on this here.
Repeat her.
Okay, you heard at a Christian school. What's one? Oh, okay. You heard that C.S. Lewis was a Christian, right? Okay. First of all, Christian Accelerated School has, what I'm about to tell you, have investigated what I said. Christian Accelerated Education, and because of it, are now ordering all their schools to ban Lewis's work. They checked into it very carefully. So did my pastor, because he was getting hit very hard with it. Found everything I said to be true. When a witch is ready to be initiated, she must not just read, but she must study the complete work of Lewis, fictional work. Lewis has said that the way to God is like a hallway with many doors. They all lead to it. Okay? Now, the fictional works of Lewis are very real to witches. They're not fictional, they're history to witches. They really believe them. Okay? They believe their guidelines. Now, Lewis was a member of the Golden Dawn. Now, that's been proven. Along with a fellow brother of the same coven named Tolkien, who wrote The Hobbit. They were in the same time. Now, the Golden Dawn is the private church that the Rothschilds must pick every member of that church personally. It's in London. The oldest coven in the world. Okay? That's Lewis. Whether he says he's a Christian or not, that doesn't mean anything. That's where Christians are making their terrible mistake.
Could it be that he was like that, and like you said, he got converted, now he is no longer that?
He would have had to tell us. When Lewis' name was on the Golden Dawn records right up to the time that I got out. I mean, there's no betrayal there. He never did leave them. Okay? I want to say something real quick that will answer this. Many people supposedly are getting saved from the Manson family and from other things. Let me tell you something real quick so there will be no misunderstanding. You come out of the occult, you come out of the Masons, you come out anything in the Illuminati. There's one distinct thing. Anywhere there's a vow of secrecy, that vow of secrecy must be broken. Not in part, please. When somebody breaks their complete vow of secrecy, they're out. But until they do, they're not. Okay?
Charlie, this is it.
That's right.
Written in double what?
Witch's language. That's exactly right. Okay.
Did you hear his question? How do Masons relate to all of this?
Okay.
Listen closely, you Masons.
Council 13 is the highest council in the Illuminati. The council right below it is the Council 33. That's called the Grand Masters. They're the 33 highest Masons in the world.
To be a member of the Council of 33, you must take a human life in a ceremony to prove your worthiness. We have in our hands copies, and Chick Publications is releasing this in their new book, Angel of Light. Copies of a 32nd, 33rd level book which proclaims Jesus Christ, the God of brutality and sin and evil, and Lucifer, the God of love, beauty, and peace, and the true God. Yeah, a little shocking, huh? Different from the way it's portrayed. But don't be mad at the lower Masons. It also says in the same book that the lower Masons are sheep to be sheared. Now, many Masons are getting saved through our message, lower and higher, because they recognize when I didn't tonight, gave my initiation to become a witch, and my vow of secrecy is the same as theirs, all the way through, the same, no different. Now, Masons were started by the Illuminati. It's all through our history that they're tied with the Illuminati. Their rights are witchcraft rights when witchcraft had to go underground. We've had people come in and tear up their membership cards and get right with the Lord, mainly because if you didn't know that Charles Finney was a Mason, and when he got saved, he said, I can't be a Mason and be a Christian. It is impossible because the vows I must take are non-Christian vows. Okay? People are getting saved right and left. They all have one thing to say. When they leave the Masons, the reason they didn't leave before is they were afraid of what the Masons would do to them. Now, if it is a good group, why are people afraid to leave it?
Okay, folks, I got a few things to say here, and I wish you'd listen to me on this. There's a lot of relevancy that I am finding in what that John Todd had to say back in those days. And actually, the Lord has actually led me back to some of this stuff that John Todd had to say about that. Let me first of all say this. You remember when he was talking about the Pagan Inn records? Well, let me tell you what the Pagan Inn means right there. Of course, you know what pagan means. But the inn, if you go to Greek, you can't transfer that over to Greek. The inn doesn't exist, so it moves you on to Hindu. The Hindu terminology. That's the rules in Greek. And inn means the great serpent. So that recording company was the pagan of the great serpent, is what that meant. Now, Todd probably knew that, but he just couldn't go over every single thing. Folks, I find this man's testimonies to be genuine, and I find his testimonies to be very relevant in today, because every time that I look into something that he's talking about, it opens a corridor up that connects me in with other things that I have already found out as truth on my own. I'm being honest with you. And that goes to show me this man really got saved in Christ. I mean, he was a Collins and come over here and changed his last name, just like I told you in that prophetic warning I had the other day about Mockingjay, a prophetic warning for March 1st. Look at the woman that's on the front, folks. Her last name's Collins, okay? I'm not saying that everybody that's a Collins is a witch, but I'm saying there's a group of Collinses that are witches. Now, when he was talking about the end of the Yellow Brick Road, if you want to tie in with that a little bit, go to buy Crowley, Man Behind the Curtain. And then go to the next video. It says Still Not Convinced, and take a look at the COVID mask on Dorothy. Let's see here. What else did he have to say that I wanted to cover here too? There was so many things, man, that I just felt so relevant. He tied in the Golden Dawn with Aleister Crowley, and that ties them in with the Rothschilds, which ties them into Switzerland, which is given the shot. And I have tried to tell you guys, this whole thing about Aleister Crowley and this COVID thing, it's all about, folks, it's Aleister Crowley's plan. And you may say, Jerry, why are you the only one that's pursuing Crowley on this? Well, Crowley has created a huge deception, folks, in this situation. And let me tell you what the deception is. There's no way that I can be tied in with what's going on right now, technology, etc., because I died back in 1948. And that is the big deception when it comes to Crowley, folks. But trust me, it's his plan. This man let the cat out of the bag a lot, guys. on what was going on with the occult and what their plans was in these end times, and it's tying in really big right now. What I would do is, I strongly suggest that you look back at some of my videos, and I strongly suggest that you pay attention to what I have to say here in the next month. I'm not going to be on YouTube much longer. I have a time limit to this. I'm going to try to show you the truth. I know what the truth is. Getting it out to you is going to be kind of hard. But I've already got the truth out. I have. In those Lamb of God videos that I had, and some of those videos that's got the happy faces on it that I put with Sean Harross, I've already got the truth out, folks. Go to my second video about going to Greek right there and take a look at how many of those medicines and stuff that's second video I ever made. What those medicines really mean that come out of Switzerland. If you will stay with me, I promise you I will show you the truth. And I know what the truth is. And it's not for money, guys. I'm quitting YouTube here in another month or so. I'm quitting. When the Lord tells me this is enough, it's enough. And it has nothing to do with money. So I'm going to tell you what. The other day I noticed that some people had been trying to get the truth out on social media, and they had shot them down and said they were all after money. So I'm going to make a proclamation right now that if, let's say these videos explode and the truth gets out, and they have to send me a check, which I don't think that'll ever happen. What I will do is I will make a video, and I'll give 30% of that money to my kids that need some things. And I'll take 70% of that, and I will make a video and go right down here to Palatica, Florida, and hand that 70% over in person on a check to the Rhodey Heaver Boys Ranch for little orphan kids. I promise you, I'll do it. I'll make a video. If they had to hand me a check for $6,000, that means that 4,000 some odd dollars of that would go down to the Rhodey Heaver Boys Ranch for little orphan kids, and I would hand that check across the counter to them down here in Palatica, Florida. You help me get the word out, and you see if I do. But I'm going to. They killed John Todd eventually. They did. They finally got him. And folks, if anything else, help me not make this this man's death in vain. This man died trying to tell you the truth. He really did. I promise you 100% he died trying to tell you the truth. So help me out here, okay? Thank you much, and I'm going to put a video on after this about how he died, okay? All right.